What's something that sounds like a conspiracy theory but is actually true? U/own_possession_1769 responded. The Greenbrier Bunker. People love conspiracies about huge underground complexes built for the rich and famous to survive nuclear fallouts, think Denver Airport, and that's exactly what Greenbrier is. The bunker was built under the Greenbrier Resort for Congresspeople to escape to, and was kept a secret for 30 years, even though people suspected, why is there a 7,000-foot airstrip for a town of 3,000 people? For the entire time it was functional, every congressperson was assigned a bunk. These days you can take tours, and I'm sure we'll hear about the next bunker once it's defunct. U/Sprout responded. That the US government actually had a paranormal unit. That movie, The Men Who Stare at Goats. It was based on a true story. The US military was actively trying to see if they could find people with skills like stopping the heart of a goat, or dowsing, or psychic spying. The whole thing pretty much fell apart when it was deemed that the people participating were not very effective. If you have to stare at a goat for hours in order to get it to fall over and die, how are they supposed to make use of it for assassinations? But, bottom line, it did exist. Same with the Nazis having a paranormal unit during the 40s. Hitler believed in acquiring the Spear of Destiny because he believed it would help him win the war, along with other occult stuff. That's partly what the Wolfenstein games have made popular. U/Indiana Jones responded. Nestle's baby formula scandal. Nestle aggressively marketed baby formula to mothers in developing countries by giving free samples to hospitals and buying up billboards. The mothers would use them instead of breast milk and eventually stop producing breast milk. Then they'd need to buy formula to continue feeding their babies. Formula needed to be mixed with water, but because they often didn't have clean water, they'd put their babies at risk mixing the formula with unclean water. Also, literacy rates were lower in a lot of those places, so the mothers didn't know how to clean the bottles and couldn't read the instructions on the packaging. Those that did often didn't have the means to carry them out. A lot of them, being poorer, also resorted to watering down the formula to try and make it last longer, but then it wouldn't have enough nutrients for the baby. Nestle downplayed all of this and said it wasn't their responsibility, that people here didn't really have access to clean water and that they were just giving people the freedom of choice. U/Dreamy21 lady responded. In the 60s and 70s, thousands of Native American women were sterilized without their consent as part of a practice to sterilize poor and minority women to help their financial situation and their families' quality of life by preventing unwanted pregnancies in poor communities. Some were not informed at all and had it done to them completely without their knowledge. Others were threatened with having their health care taken away if they did not agree to have it done to them. Some studies estimate that as many as 25 to 50% of Native American women were sterilized in the 1970s, representing tens of thousands of victims. This is essentially a modern-day genocide in the United States. U/IIC4269 responded. The Black Sox scandal was a major sports controversy that rocked the baseball world in 1919. It involved members of the Chicago White Sox, one of the best teams in the league at the time, who were accused of throwing the World Series against the Cincinnati Reds. The scandal involved 8 players, including shoeless Joe Jackson, who allegedly accepted bribes from gamblers to intentionally lose games. At first, many people thought the scandal was just a conspiracy theory as the players denied any wrongdoing. The team was arguably in the top position, some of the accused were insanely popular, and some fans believed that the accusations were just a way to tarnish the team's reputation. However, an investigation uncovered evidence of a complex scheme involving gamblers, team owners, and players. The investigation revealed that the players had definitely accepted bribes to the tune of a couple million today. I'm not a huge sports fan at all, but I am a history nut, and this was one of the most significant scandals in sports history, and it changed a lot of things for the entire sport, including getting a commissioner of baseball. Even though they were technically declared criminally innocent, all 8 players involved were all banned for life, and they will never be inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame despite repeated attempts to do so over the decades. U/Fredagsfisk responded. Henry Ford blamed Jews for starting WW1, and claimed that German submarines attacking US ships in 1939 was actually Jewish false flags. Funded square dancing in US schools solely because he hated jazz and associated it with Jewish people. Wrote long essays about evil Jewish conspiracies, which he had published across the US and Europe for most of the 1920s. Also paid to print and distribute 500,000 copies of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. Praised by Hitler and Himmler as a great man and valuable fighter, and distributions of Ford's writings were distributed in Germany and helped fuel the lead-up to the Holocaust. Plus, the German Ford branch illegally used French POWs as workers in 1940. He supposedly did eventually disavow his anti-Semitic views after being heavily criticized, and allegedly had a stroke and died as a response to being shown newsreel footage from the concentration camps and understanding he contributed to that, but who knows if that's true or not. Either way, too little too late. U/Stone71 responded. Your iPhone is designed to start getting worse as soon as the new models come out. I remember this being a big deal like 7 or 8 years ago. Someone can fact check me as I'm hazy on the details, but I believe it's related to the battery. Every year, the same week that the new iPhone comes out, the latest iOS becomes available for download. The new iOS is not optimized for your current device's battery, and as such the phone compromises performance in order to maintain a similar battery life. Coupled with the normal wear and tear on the battery, your phone will start sucking just so the battery can last a little longer. U/AppFlyer responded. The US spirited Nazi scientists out of Germany to avoid war crimes trials to work for us instead. Public Health Service withheld treatment for syphilis from black men to see what would happen. The CIA tested the effects of LSD in unwitting American subjects. Also, the collection of human radiation experiments where you know who did you can guess what without informed consent because reasons. Project Sunshine. Cincinnati experiments. Green Run. I say with completely honestly, these are still considered the good guys. Please don't stop to think what the bad guys have done or you'll never recover and the good guys will experiment on you without consent. Again. U/Japope responded. In 2016, a former reality TV show host vying for political office began working to convince citizens of the United States that the election he was participating in was rigged, only to learn that he had actually won the election. 4 years later in 2020, when seeking re-election, this same politician attempted to again convince the citizens of the United States that the very same election process that had given him his then current position was rigged. This time of course he lost the election. This time however he had in fact convinced a large number of people that the election was rigged. And now I can't have a normal family dinner because it's apparently a conspiracy that the United States of America has a voting system that works. U/Parabox1 responded. Free school lunch programs are being pushed in many areas by the large multinational corporations that own the contracts. Sodexo is a multinational French company worth over 17 billion. Compass is actually owned by Chartwells, which is UK-based. I am all for making sure kids eat healthy food and they should not have to pay for it. But these companies don't promote the healthy part. They also do a lot of jail contracts as well. Next time you hear think of the children, look for the company who will provide the items. Edit. I am pro-free lunch for kids, I am just anti-large corporations making money off our government. That is the point some people are not getting. U/Clockwork responded. First, just as a point of order, a conspiracy is a collusion between parties to achieve a epically nefarious ends, often by use of secrecy, manipulation, or misrepresentation. It happens pretty often, but the media government has successfully used propaganda to convince the average consumer that a conspiracy theory is, by use of the term, a completely unprobable occurrence dreamed up by a crazy person. We're all familiar with flat Earth and fake moon landing, but somehow we also forget about Watergate and 9/11. Those were successfully carried out conspiracies. There are some valid conspiracy theories out there, with loads of logically sound anecdotal evidence to support them, and typically they're just waiting on hard evidence to be confirmed by historians or media companies. But the one I'll share here is the intriguing tale of the war on drugs, and how the UK sacked its drug expert when he studied and discovered the alcohol was actually the most dangerous drug in the UK. Enjoy. U/Fredgeblet responded. The deep state. People don't understand that the idea isn't there's a vast conspiracy of people hiding in the government, it's literally the bureaucracy supports its own existence. The people that spend decades working in unelected positions in government wield vast amounts of power, tend to align with one party, and will work to sustain their own jobs. That's not a conspiracy, it's just how things work. It's no different than how a large corporation will tend to accumulate cruft if it's not regularly purged. The difference is that in the government there's no incentive to purge and a vastly larger amount of options to exert influence on the people that are supposed to be controlling things. The leadership of most federal agencies have more practical power than the average representative. U/Nachamama0311 responded. TikTok is a Chinese Trojan horse. In the future, a lot of damage is going to happen to these young TikTokers when they try to run for political office, or try to work for a federal agency that requires secret clearance. If China sees them as a threat, they'll expose all their TikTok app intel and all the data they've stolen in the background without the user's knowledge, And yes, I prefer a Western company doing that than a Chinese company. Would you install a North Korean app? No. Well, China is run exactly like North Korea. Companies answer to one person only. U/item conduct 359 responded. One example that sounds like a conspiracy theory but is actually true is the Tuskegee syphilis study conducted between 1932 and 1972. The U.S. Public Health Service studied untreated syphilis in African American men without their informed consent, even after penicillin became a known cure. This shocking violation of ethics and trust has led to lasting skepticism towards medical institutions in some communities. It highlights the importance of transparency and ethics in research, reminding us to question narratives while seeking truth. U/appropriate_gap 7107 responded. That big pharma spend millions on trying to make supplements, vitamins, and foremost vitamin D3 to look like it's useless and even dangerous by paying for articles and big studies that tells that story. Because if it became common knowledge that D3 indeed works wonders, especially for people that live in places with very little sun, Big Pharma would possibly lose billions in lost profits for the simple reason of people not getting sick as often or bad as they do now. For example, your chance of catching irritating bugs like a cold is so much smaller if you get enough D, and if you do, the chance that it quickly passes gets bigger. It even lessens the risk for depression. For example, the country of Sweden has very few sun hours per year, but a lot of depressed people, and still there is big skepticism when it comes to D. One big reason is that our medical office upholds the truth by continuing to giving safe recommendations on dosing of D that are far too small to be effective. 400 IE per day, when in fact 2000 IE per day is the need for most people. And our medical office is far from alone in this in the world. U/Solomon_copyright symbol 13 responded. There was zero reason for the Vietnam conflict. The US government dosed hundreds, maybe thousands, of people with LSD and other psych drugs, basically out of curiosity under the guise of military research. Some victims died and or went insane. Between 1981 and 1986, senior US government administration officials secretly facilitated the illegal sale of arms to Iran, which was subject to an arms embargo at the time. The administration hoped to use the proceeds of the arms sale to fund the Contras, an anti-Sandinista rebel group in Nicaragua. Millions of US citizens died as the result of Trump's desire to rid himself of any vestige of the previous presidential administration, including the CDC's guidebook on proper national procedure for dealing with an epidemic. And tons more. U/Signal Pirate 3961 responded. NASA had a small nuclear reactor partially underground at the Lewis Research Center in Cleveland, now the Glenn Research Center. The reactor was about 50 feet from the Cleveland Hopkins Airport runway. It was decommissioned in the early 1960s but was still there when I worked in that building in the mid-1960s. The earthen mound is still there. And the rooms underneath. Any odd object you found in a storage locker had to run by the health physics office to see if it was radioactive. We did find some hot items. I doubt many people have ever heard of this, and I won't tell the name of the facility. I do have a copy of the final report about the facility. If you don't hear from me again, tell the world my story. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, you might enjoy the rest of my content. Check it out.